Hey guys, I just wanted to make a quick video. I had this idea the other day. I disassembled my 560 because the action felt a little gritty. So what I thought I would do is I thought I would go ahead and get the camera out and kind of show the disassembly and kind of why I disassembled the knife. Hang on 1 second. Well, one of the things that I thought was really weird is that, you know, it's normal for manufacturers to use different sized screws for the pivot and then for the the scales. What I thought was weird is they used a smaller one for the pivot and larger ones for the handle scales. I'm not really sure why they did that. That's too small. So yeah, I'm not really 100% sure why they decided to go that route, but you know, I guess it really doesn't make too big a difference. There we go. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to disassemble the handle scales first. I'm not a professional at this. I don't know if there's a specific way you should do this, or whatever, but this is the way I like to do it. I like to do the handle scales first. And what I'm doing is I'm holding the two together. I'm pressing with my thumb just to keep it together, because when you disassemble these, you don't want it to like bend it out and cause any damage while pulling it apart. So I want to compress the two sides together, so there's the normalization of pressure remains constant while you're doing this. Just keep unscrewing these. Sorry, this is hard to do with the camera or with the tripod in front of me and the dogs behind me. Okay, so just go ahead and pop these off. Oh, don't want to lose them. Okay, so we'll sit these to the side so we don't lose them. Okay, and then we'll switch out our bit for the smaller one for the disassembly of the pivot. And again, I'm applying pressure this whole time. The pivot comes out quite easy because it's screwed into, not into G10 and titanium, but it's just straight into the pivot. Okay, so now that we've unscrewed just the one side, you don't need to do the other side. This side can pop off. So first thing I'll show you is, first check out how thin this G10 scale is. I mean, that is quite thin. Kind of lends itself to how light this knife is. So a lot of milling went into this. I don't want to bend it because I'm afraid I'll break it. I actually have a replacement coming from Peter R on off the forum. I saw him show off his carbon fiber, his lightning strike carbon fiber, and I immediately asked him if I could get one, and he went ahead and hooked me up with one. Well, I bought it, but so that should be coming in the next couple days. I'm excited about that. So that's your standard G10, and then here is your knife without the G10. You can notice that this liner is really milled out. Really, I mean, they took out just about everything they could take out. They left a nice piece here for the pocket clip on both sides, and then a nice big piece for the pivot. And then what I want to show you, go ahead and just pop this scale off. Again, very thin scale, not much to it at all. This thing weighs nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing. I don't know whether this is stainless steel or titanium. The weight would make me think that it's titanium, but could it easily be stainless. So we'll set that to the side. And the next thing I want to show you is the bearing system. Okay. So unlike IKBS, which uses just a little slot where all the bearings sit, this actually uses a washer where the bearings are inset. So you can actually just pop this guy right out, and here's your bearing. And that's what makes this work so smoothly. The bearings are inset in the washer. You can kind of see they're raised, so there's not really any danger of them falling out. It is fairly thick, which is why they kind of, if you see the blade, which is why they kind of carved out the space in the blade to actually sit the washer. Now, the reason I took this apart is the action was getting kind of gritty. And I don't. I think it was kind of always a little bit gritty, and I was a little bit kind of like wondering why it was getting so gritty. So I took it apart, and what I found were there were metal shavings stuck to the blade tang right here. Not the tang, but the inset area here with the blade. There was metal shavings stuck to it, as well as metal shavings stuck to the inside portion of the liner. You see where that that kind of like area is where the bearings roll? That's normal, but there was shavings all around it, which I think may have something to do with it breaking in and kind of carving a little notch out here. Once I cleaned it up, it was much smoother. So, so that's the inset side. If I take the blade off, go ahead and take the blade out. Just pop it out. Set it to the side. This is a very thick, heavy blade. I was very impressed when I took this off about how heavy it was. You can see the area where the bearing on this side is kind of wearing into the blade, and where the detent is kind of carving its way. There was a lot of gunk around the detent area too, which I think has something to do with it breaking in. And then on this side, this is the titanium side. So you can see it's not thin. It's about the same. It's almost exactly the same as the liner plus the G10 on the other one, but it's very well milled out. Very, very good. And if you think that this is going to subtract from the strength of the lock bar, that's kind of silly. For one thing, the area where they've carved out in here is no thinner than the area where they've carved out for the lock bar. So even if this was uniformly this size, it would be the same strength, because this bar is only as strong as this thinnest point, and if the whole thing is that thin, then what's the difference? So so the cutout here is really good. It leaves a big chunk here up front, doesn't mill out this area any, which is pretty good, so I think that's pretty nice. They leave that nice big chunk up here. Here's your detent ball. The lock face does look like it has been, I don't know, carbonized or something, or I don't know if that's just the wear, but it's got a nice little, I think that is just wear, actually. I think that's just from it wearing off the detent onto the blade. Can't really focus on that. And that's your lock face right there. There is some wear, but I think it's fine. The rest of it's milled out fairly nicely too. I really don't think this detracts from the strength of it at all. The standoffs are nice, big, thick standoffs. They sit right nicely into the liner. Overall, it's good. The pivot's a good sized. It is a hollowed out pivot, obviously, because it's got to have the screw hole. And if I take out the other washer, you'll see the section, and you can see some of those metal shavings still left there. I couldn't really get them all out of this guy, but it was a little bit worse than that on the other one. And if you just pop this pivot out, which is a hexagonal pivot, so it sits right in there and prevents it from going anywhere. You can actually kind of get in there and try and clean that out. I used some break-free and let it sit for a few minutes before reassembling. So that's it. That's the disassembly, all the parts and everything. I'm not going to show the reassembly just because. Well, you know what? I will. I'll show the reassembly for anybody who wants to see that. I'm not going to do any close-ups, but I'll just do it back here so I can look over the camera. So we're going to put our pivot back in, and then we're just going to match it up, make sure it sits nice. I'm going to put my finger on the back of it there so it doesn't get loose. We're going to set the bearing back in. Then we're going to take our blade. One thing with the bearing, when I put it back together, I didn't notice when I took them apart if they were any different. I took a look and they aren't really any different, but I did fit whatever one fit best in each hole. I sat in each one. I don't think there's a huge difference, but I noticed a slight difference. So, okay, so we're just gonna, once we do that, we're gonna just set the pivot right through the blade. We're gonna I'm gonna match the stop pin up with the tang, and I'm gonna just give it a nice little press, so that it stays, I'm going to tighten it down so that it would be as if it were, closed. So I'm going to hold that down there. I'm going to set the second bearing back in. Okay, we're going to get our other liner section, and I'm going to hold the blade tang while I'm doing this. kind of tricky, but I'm going to try and hold on to the blade tang as best I can while I slip into this liner. There we go. And then I'm going to make sure, a couple things, make sure your stop pin is fully seated, make sure your pivot is fully seated, make sure everything is just nice and seated, and then everything else should be good to go. You should match up all your standoffs, make sure all your standoffs are in set, and we're good. And then I'm just going to slide this G10 right over top, just like that. Match it up nice. I'm still applying pressure this whole time. I haven't let go once. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start doing it in the opposite direction I started in, and I'm going to do the pivot first, just because I want the bearings to, and I'm going to tighten this down pretty much all the way. I'm not going to give any wiggle room here. Okay, now I'm just going to keep applying pressure, and then I'm going to start way back here at the back end. Make sure this is lined up right. Here we go. Okay. Oh, you know what? Forgot to change out my pivot. Again, still applying pressure the whole time. Okay. And we're just gonna back it out a couple times, make sure I don't cross thread it. And there we go. Tighten it down all the way. These are gonna just be tightened down all the way, you know, regardless. Okay, so we're gonna tighten it down all the way. There we go, not cross-threaded. And I'm not bearing down like majorly on this. You know, you just want to tighten it down enough so that you know it's not going anywhere. And I've released pressure off the scale because now that I've got, you know, the pivot in and the opposite standoff in, I know I'm good to go. Okay, and down. Okay, now I'm going to take and replace, go back to my pivot bit, and I'm going to back it out. I'm going to tighten it down first. I'm just going to back it out just a bit and then tighten it back. And bam, smooth as can be. And when I did this, it got significantly smoother. I don't have any blade play in any direction, and it's buttery smooth. Easy as pie. So really happy once I disassembled it and cleaned it up a little bit. If you're mechanically inclined at all, this would be no problem. Some of you might have more issues with it. You know, hopefully this will help you. From what I've heard, taking it apart does not void your warranty unless you do something really stupid. So if you feel unconfident in doing this, I would just not do it. But if you're, I mean, you saw how easy that was. It's not difficult at all. So just pay attention to what you're doing, and you know, don't be a butterfingers, and don't, you know, just jam stuff together, and you know, you'll be fine. That's not hard at all. So really happy with the results. It's really smooth. No issues at all. So there we go. All right, thanks for watching.